I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Monday, February the 3rd, 2014. I want to first start off by congratulating the Seattle Seahawks for winning Super Bowl 48. Now, and I also want to congratulate Denver for getting there. So, I want to congratulate both teams, but particularly Seattle for winning Super Bowl 48. Now, though it was not an epic game, it was a game that I enjoyed because here's why. In the day and age of offensive football and the rules set up for the offense, it was great to see a defense that could still dominate, even in today's era. And I'm going to get more or talk more on that a little bit later. But I want to first start off also, or really want to start off this show really by apologizing to my viewers. I did you guys a disservice. What do I mean? I should have seen this beatdown that took place yesterday coming. And I failed to saw it because I couldn't get over my anger of seeing, and the frustration of seeing my 49ers lose to the Seahawks. But yesterday's game was actually predictable if we would have actually paid attention, and especially to history. Because history has always shown that when you get a top-ranked offense versus a top-ranked defense, 9 out of 10 times, the top-ranked defense comes out on top. Let's just go through some of this history. The top 12 highest scoring teams in the NFL regular season history and how they fared and how they went that postseason. Denver, 2013 season, 606 points, the most points in NFL history, got dominated by the Seahawks. Okay? New England, 2007 season, they scored 589 points. They got dominated by the Giants. And when I mean dominated, I'm referring to defensively. The game was not really close. Okay? 2011, Green Bay Packers, 560 points. They got shut down by the New York Giants. And they, when New England lost to the Giants, they lost in that Super Bowl. Green Bay lost to the Giants. They lost in the, I believe it was at the divisional round. Yes, in 2011. New England, 2012, they 557 points. They lost to the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC Championship game. They got dominated. Minnesota, 1998, 556 points. They lost to Atlanta in the NFC Championship game. They were held down because they only lost that because the kicker couldn't make a freaking field goal. I mean, like, come on, make a field goal, you go into the Super Bowl. Okay? 2011, New Orleans Saints, 547 points. And they lost to the 49ers in the NFC Divisional round. Okay? That was actually a pretty good game, by the way. New Orleans didn't get dominated, but they kind of got held down in that game. Washington, 1983 Washington Redskins, 541 points. They lost to the LA Rams in the Super Bowl. They got dominated. Okay? St. Louis Rams, 2000, 540 points. They lost to the New Orleans Saints in the NFC wildcard round. St. Louis Rams, 1999. Okay? 526 points. They won the Super Bowl over Tennessee. Indianapolis, 2004 season, 522 points, and they lost to New England in the AFC Divisional round. So this is just some of the teams that was very prolific offensively that ended up getting really beat down either in a divisional round, a wild card, conference championship, or even worse, the Super Bowl. Only the 1999 St. Louis Rams actually won the Super Bowl, being a top or having the highest scoring offense that year. Which goes to show you, this is why if I had really paid attention and really looked and analyzed that game carefully, yesterday's results was not surprising. Anytime you get a top-ranked offense versus a top-ranked defense, my rule is, regardless of sport, go with the top-ranked defense. And go with them big, because usually they win big. You'll have that occasional classic game, but most of the times it's not a classic. And I should have known that. So I apologize to my viewership, because I did pick Seattle to win the game. I thought the game was going to be a lot more competitive than what it was. But if I had looked and really did my homework, I would have saw that this game wasn't going to really be that competitive. And here's the funny thing, because if you watch one of my previous episodes, or segments, should I say, I had picked Seattle to blow out New Orleans. And New Orleans offensively is every bit as good as Denver. The only difference is Denver plays in a much easier division, in a much easier conference. So that's why they can put up those record-setting points. Denver did not have to deal with the type of defenses that New Orleans have to deal with. They didn't go up against the Legion. They didn't have to deal with the Legion of Boom like San Francisco, Arizona, St. Louis, Carolina. These teams have to deal with. Denver didn't have to deal with these teams on this type of defense on a consistent basis. Defense, especially in the NFC West, is a way of life there. This is what they breathe, they eat, sleep, everything defense. Now, they may not have the great offenses, but their defense is so good that it kind of makes up for that. Which now makes me look back at this, and I owe Rex Ryan an apology. And here's why. Because, see, I fell into the same trap. And this is another reason why I also want to apologize to my viewers. I fell into the same trap that I criticized the media for. Short-sightedness and not following history. Because history has always shown that defenses do win championships. But I fell into that trap of, well, the rules are set up differently today. You can't win the same way today you could 20, 30 years ago. Okay? But if I had paid attention, the trend was going back into that direction. Because you're seeing teams becoming more defensively stronger. Teams like San Francisco, Seattle, Arizona, St. Louis, Carolina, even New Orleans. Teams that are becoming more defensively well-known. So I should have seen this trend that was starting to come back. And I failed to see it. Now, this is where I owe Rex Ryan an apology. Because I didn't think his philosophy could win in today's game. But I was wrong. However, speaking of the Jets, your philosophy can win. But you don't have the players that Seattle and San Francisco have to get it done, even in the weak AFC. Why do I say this? Because you don't have a Richard Sherman. Now, you had a Richard Sherman because you had a Darrelle Revis, but your owner didn't want to pay him the money. The owner and the media here did not feel that a cornerback was worth $16 to $18 million per. Yet we found out, especially in the Superbag, cornerbacks are worth their weight in gold, because here's why. Look what Seattle did to Denver. Let's analyze this carefully here, folks. You see, and everybody focuses on Richard Sherman because, he talks loud. And so everybody talks about Richard Sherman. But Seattle Seahawks defense is more than just Richard Sherman. Think about it. Before the suspension, they had also Brewer. He was another shutdown corner. But after suspension, they were forced to go with Maxwell. Maxwell was pretty good in his own right. He's like a Antonio Cromartie type player. Very good in his own right. So you had a shutdown corner on one side in Sherman. You have a pretty good shutdown corner on the other side in Maxwell. So that takes care of two receivers right there. Then, they're more than just their corners. Their safeties lower the That's why they call it the Legion of Boom. You got Earl Thomas, one of the premier safeties in the league. Okay? Earl Thomas. And then you got 6'3", 300 pounds. I'm just exaggerating about the pounds. But my man Cam Chancellor, the real Cam, okay, who lowers the boom. Did you see what he did to Julius Thomas when Thomas came across that middle and bang through that? That set the tone right there in the first quarter. Come across the middle, you pay the price. The Jets don't have that in their backfield. The Jets need to get that in their backfield so this way the guys up front can now do what they do. So if I'm the Jets, I am spending this offseason, the draft particularly, because you're not going to hardly be able to find them in the free agent market. So you're going to have to do this through the draft. Find those type of guys for your backfield on the defensive side of the ball. Then, Rex, we can now talk. Then you've got a shot. Then now, that's just on the defensive side of the ball. But Seattle, see, everybody wants to focus in on Seattle's defense. And Seattle's defense is great. For today's game, they are great. And I'm going to get more to their defense in a little bit. But Seattle is more than just defense, folks. Seattle have an excellent special teams. But more importantly, they got a pretty good offense. Is it Peyton Manning, Tom Brady type offense? Lethal, Drew Brees type offense? They put up a lot of points? No. But this offense don't have to do that. But here's what this offense doesn't do. They don't turn the ball over. So they don't give you the short field. They don't give you the short field. They're not going to give you cheap points. They're going to make you drive the length of the field on their defense. And that's hard to do on a consistent basis. This is why Seattle is Seattle. And so getting back to the Jets, you need a quarterback who's going to take care of the football. That's the first, number one priority. And then second of all, he's got to be able to make plays because Alex Smith can take care of the football. But Alex Smith is not a playmaker. He doesn't make plays for you. That's not his strength. You know, my friend was asking me after the game, or when the game was really a rout yesterday, one of my friends was asking me, would Seattle be as good if they had an Andy Dalton or an Alex Smith? And I said, well, if they had an Andy Dalton, no, because Andy Dalton's mistake prone. This is because Cincinnati have that kind of defense, folks. Cincinnati has that kind of team that could have matched up very well against Seattle. I don't think Denver was the best team in the AFC. I think the best team in the AFC is Cincinnati, but they're being held back by their quarterback. Denver just has the most explosive offense in the AFC. Okay? And that made the difference this year. But as we see, the best teams were really in the NFC. But getting back to my friend's question, so I do not think that Seattle would have been as good with Andy Dalton. Now, Alex Smith does something Andy doesn't do, and that's he takes care of the ball. He doesn't make mistakes. In other words, he doesn't turn the ball over. So that helps. But here's why Seattle still would not be as good. And I don't think they get here if Alex Smith is quarterbacking this team. Just look at 2 weeks ago, because that really was the Super Bowl, folks. The game against the 49ers. That was the Super Bowl for all intended purposes. Today was just more yesterday was more the coronation. It was a dress rehearsal for the coronation. That's all yesterday was. The real Super Bowl was 2 weeks ago. But the 49ers had a nice lead on Seattle by a 14-point lead on Seattle. 12-point lead on Seattle. And against a team like Seattle, that's a big lead. That's a big lead. And late in that game, Russell Wilson made plays that Alex Smith doesn't make. See, that's the difference, is that Russell Wilson is more than just a game manager, folks. he's getting that label of game manager because he does. You look at his stats; they're not gaudy, and so now because they're not gaudy, people want to denigrate him by calling him a game manager. No, Alex Smith is a game manager, and I like Alex Smith. This is not knocking Alex Smith, but Alex Smith, Mark Sanchez, they're game managers. Russell Wilson is a playmaker. Because if Seattle really needed him to make plays, he can do that. But look at what he did yesterday in that Super Bowl, folks. Look at his third down percentage. When do you know a game manager to do so well on third down? I mean, it seemed like every big third down, he was making plays. Anytime Seattle needed to move the chains, he moved it. He found a way to move it, whether it was through his arm, with his arm or his leg. He moved the chains. His completion percentage on third down, it was probably better than what he was on first and second down. So they got a very good offense. So if the Jets is going to try to, and any other team, not just the Jets, but if any other team is going to try to copy what Seattle did, because you're going to have a lot of teams trying to copy what Seattle did. Okay? But you got to get Seattle-type talent. You have to have guys who are playing with a hunger, a chip on their shoulder, and something to prove. You need those type of guys. That's what Seattle was about. Seattle was about imposing their will. You don't hear a lot of that today with the way the rules are set up in today's NFL. Now, some people are asking, well, how is it the Broncos cannot show up on at the biggest stage or the biggest game? Blame the NFL for that. You set the rules up for what took place yesterday. Because why? Denver never really went up against a defense like Seattle's this year. They didn't deal with a defense that is physical and is fast. It's Seattle and hits you from play to play to play. They're hitting you. Okay? After they hit Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas and Walker and them boys a couple of times, they wanted no part of Seattle. Peyton Manning, after before he even got shot, when the guys got near him, he was tap dancing. Okay? And he was throwing those ducks. He wanted no part of Seattle's pass rush. Which now gets me to Peyton Manning. If you're going to praise him when he wins, which is what the media did the last 2 weeks, after that virtuoso performance that he did against New England in the AFC Championship game where he threw for like almost 500 yards or however many yards he threw for, which was outright ridiculous. I mean, New England they didn't even pose any resistance. So everybody was talking about, oh, this is going to be Manning's coronation, Manning this and Manning that. No one said, well, wait a minute. Manning is getting this fortune because he's been blessed throughout his career of having a strong offensive line. No one mentioned about his offensive line protecting his rear end. Making certain that they're protecting him so he can do the things he do. Nobody mentioned that. But the minute that Seattle put the pressure on Manning, and Manning could not perform like Manning did, what does some analysts want to do? They want to criticize the offensive line. Oh, you got to protect Peyton Manning. You did a terrible job. Whoa. If you're not going to praise them when they win, then don't criticize them when they lose. I can't stand when the media do that. You made it all about Peyton Manning for the last 2 weeks. Manning or any other quarterback in this league is only as good as their offensive line, folks, or the offensive line play. They're only as good as the offensive line play. Football is a very simple sport, but these analysts want to make it more complex and make themselves sound a lot more smarter than what they really are. Football is a real simple sport. Just watch the line play. Offensive, defensive line. Whichever unit dominates the game. And then that team's going to win the game. It's just that simple. How do you think that all these teams, all these top-ranked teams or top-scoring teams can get shut down year after year. This is not an accident, folks. This is not a coincidence. This is just what we call history. And there's that old saying, when you ignore history, you're doomed to repeat it. Guess what? The NFL yesterday repeated history. Yesterday, as I was talking to my dad and my cousins, I was like, yesterday was the NFL's worst nightmare. That was not what they wanted on their biggest stage. First of all, most media people wanted wanted Denver to win. Most people wanted Denver to win. Because why? They love offenses. That's why, and they love them some Peyton Manning. Most of the media, this is why the rules are set up, because the media and the bigwigs, they want offense. They don't want defense. So that's why they made the rules to set up for guys like Peyton Manning to be successful. Because anytime Peyton Manning was shut down, they would come with a rule that says, oh, okay, now you can't do this. Or no, now you can't do that. To try to help out Peyton Manning and his ilk. Because why? Peyton Manning, if somebody would have said, Kaepernick is tougher on Seattle, it's tougher for Seattle to deal with, then Manning, that would be almost like ludicrous or almost like sacrilege. But the reality is Kaepernick causes Seattle more problems than Peyton Manning. And here's why. If those rushers, those edge rushers for Seattle would have rushed against Kaepernick the way they rushed against Manning, all Kaepernick would have did was pull that ball down and run for about 40, 50 yards. That's the equalizer. That's the equalizer. But Manning isn't running anywhere. And they know this. So they could just pin their ears back and say, okay, when Manning drops back and he plants that right foot, we know exactly where he's going to be. And he's not moving too far from that. The key is to make him move from that spot. And so they're able to freely rush him without worrying about him pulling the ball down and running. I'm sorry, that's just not a gift Manning has. This is why mobile quarterbacks give Seattle problems. Then stationary. I mean, any pocket passes that they went up against this year, they pretty much shut them down. They pretty much shut them down. It didn't matter. It did not matter. Manning was no exception. So they set the rules up to help a guy like Manning, and yet Seattle was still able to lower the boom on this team. Now, I'm going to say something that might come off a little controversial, but it's the truth. Because after this game, a lot of people was comparing this Seattle squad, and particularly their defense, to the 2000 Ravens team that dominated the Giants, and the 85 Bears team that dominated New England. But they had great seasons. They were the number one defenses that season. Okay? All right, I'm going to say this, and this is going to come off as maybe controversial, but it's the truth. This Seattle team, this Seattle defense, I'm going to have to put ahead of them, and I'm going to explain why. Because even during the Ravens' time, before they changed the rules to really help the offenses, it was still about defenses. Okay, they went with Trent Dilfer. Come on, Trent Dilfer, the game manager. A game manager, folks. You can't win today with a game manager because the rules is set up for the offense. So you can't really win today with a game manager. You need somebody who can make some plays. But this is not about Trent Dilfer. This is about Seattle Seahawks and the way the rules are set up. The rules were set up for Peyton Manning to do well yesterday, and for Seattle to dominate them the way they did, but not just that. Because it's one thing you can show up for one game, okay, on the Super Bowl. You can have a dominant performance in the Super Bowl, but they would dominate all year long, folks. They would dominate defensively. They would dominate all year long. in a pass-happy era where the rules are set up not to favor them. And yet for them to do that, and then to hold the highest scoring team in the league with 606 yards to just over 300 yards, but meaningless yards, and only 8 points. 8 points. Okay? 8. This was the most dominant defense I have seen. I got to put them ahead of those Bears team. I got to put them ahead of that Ravens team because the rules was still favoring defenses back then. Where today, where the rules are set up not for Seattle to be able to do what they did yesterday. To me, I got to put them ahead of them for that reason alone. And then to shut down the great Peyton Manning and on the biggest stage. The Ravens didn't have to do that. They just had to deal with Kerry Collins. Or the 85 Bears didn't have to do that. They just had to deal with Tony Eason. Okay, quarterbacks, ain't nothing special. Nothing special. Neither one of them had to be anybody special in that Super Bowl. But they shut down a future Hall of Famer. When I come back, I want to talk about the Denver Broncos. Okay, welcome back to the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Monday, February the 3rd, 2014. Now, there was little that the Denver Broncos could do yesterday. I mean, they were just simply roadkill for Seattle. But I'm going to put, I got a problem here. And I want people to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not blaming John Fox for this loss because there was nothing he really could have done. He just didn't have the team that could have beaten Seattle. If they would have played 10 times, Seattle most likely would win 10 times. And though the score would be different each game, the results would still be the same. I mean, Seattle was clearly better. But here was my issue with John Fox in that game. Very few people talked about it afterwards. Matter of fact, only Donovan McNabb talked about it and Mike Francesa, which was kind of disappointing because I thought in the first half, John Fox made a coaching blunder. Now, personally, as a disclaimer, I am not a big fan of kicking field goals. To me, when you're kicking field goals, that means you're not getting touchdowns. It's hard to win when you're kicking field goals. With that said, there's a reason why field goals still has its place in today's NFL, folks. And you got to know when to utilize the field goal or kick the field goal. Seattle is up 22-0. Okay? Seattle is up 22-0 in this game. It's late first half. It's in the second quarter, late second quarter. It's going towards halftime. There's about 3 minutes and some change remaining when Denver's driving down the field. For the first time in the game, they're actually getting some sustained offense. But you could tell that their offense was struggling all game long, and even on that possession, they were struggling. They get down to about the 30-yard line, somewhere around there. And they missed on a third down play. It was about 4th and 2, 4th and 3, somewhere 4th and 3-ish, somewhere around there. And I remember I'm sitting there watching the game, and I'm like, okay, bring out the field goal unit. Kick the field goal, get 3 points, get some points on the board. I see that they got Peyton Manning and that offense still on the sideline. So I'm like, what is John Fox doing? If you don't make that, if you go for that first down and you don't make it, the game for all intents and purposes is really over. And I'm going to explain to you why in a minute. But he left the offense on there. And predictably, they didn't get the first down. To me, that killed whatever momentum they had. Now, here's why I say that was a critical coaching error. And I don't think it would have changed the outcome of the game. It certainly didn't help matters. You got to understand, this game, I remember something Michael Jordan once said. The game is 90% mental, 10% physical. Now, he was referring to basketball, but you can say the same for football. This game is more mental than physical. Psychology matters, especially in sports. And see, at that point, before that fourth down, Seattle had all the momentum in their direction. It was like the game was building like an avalanche. The ball was getting bigger and bigger. The snowball was getting bigger and bigger. At that point, if you're Denver, you got to stop the momentum. At the very least, slow it down. But you went for it. And when you missed it, predictably, I said, realistically, the game is over. Because here's why. Psychologically, think of it this way. What is it better? Is it better to be down 22-3 going into halftime? That's a 19-point deficit. That's 3 possessions, folks. Still, you're down 3 possessions. Or 22-0. Because if you don't make that first down, you're still down 22-0 going into halftime. Guess what, folks? That's 4 possessions. Now, against most other teams, that would not matter. But you're not playing most other teams. You're playing the Seattle Seahawks, the top-ranked defensive team in the league. Do you know how difficult it is to score on 4 possessions on Seattle? Hell, it's difficult getting 3 scores on Seattle, let alone 4. When you're playing one of those type of teams, defensive teams in the league, every point matters. You cannot just take an assumption that you'll make it up in the second half. It don't work that way. When you're playing the Seattles, the Carolinas, the San Franciscos, every point matters. Anytime you got a chance to get points, get in the first half, get them. I don't care if it's 3 points. A 22-3 lead, though still daunting, is not as bad as a 22-0 lead off a failed fourth down. From a psychological standpoint, it takes the wind right out of your sails. And then on top of that, now you got to come out of the halftime and kick off to the other team. And I remember I was on the phone with my dad and I was saying, well, and we both were in agreement. If the only shot Denver had now, they had to come out and get a stop. Their defense had to come out and get a stop. Any kind of score, whether it was 3 or 7 points, the game was over. For all intended purposes. Because now it goes from 22-0 to 25-0, or worse, 27-0. Well, guess what? I remember they came out for halftime, and I even suggested that John Fox should maybe try an onside kick there. Try Sean Payton. What does it hurt? You need a momentum changer because the first half, Seattle dominated. You needed something to change the momentum. Just like back in that Super Bowl against the Indianapolis Colts with Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints. The Saints was losing that game. What changed the game is when he came out at halftime, he did the onside kick. That changed the entire dynamics of the game. Now, I'm not saying that it would have done the same yesterday, but darn it, try something. They did a pooch kick, okay, in hopes of pinning them deep, but a pooch kick. Percy Harvin picks the ball up, knifes through their defense, their special teams, and boom, he's off to the races. And once he gets in the open, you're not catching him because he's like the fastest guy in the league. Me and my brother was like, game over. At that point, right, while he's running down, we said game over. Because now you go from being 22-0 to 27-0. That took all the win, because whatever speech that John Fox gave at that halftime, you might as well just tear it up because it took all the win out of Denver sales. They had no chance of winning at that point because why? They saw now no hope. And I'm not saying that those 3 points would have given them the hope, but man, it would have been a little bit helpful because when they scored that touchdown late in the third quarter, now instead of being down 30-something to 8, you're down 30-something to 11. And that's still not good, but what you get my point. I'm sorry, I just was not in favor of the fact that he chose not to kick that field goal. I was not in favor of the fact that he went for it on fourth down. I thought that was a colossal mistake on John Fox's part. And to me, they were tight. That safety to start the game was just simply a bad omen. And I give the Seahawks fans credit. The 12th man showed up yesterday. I did not think that was possible. I said on the neutral site, there's more Denver fans than Seattle fans. But Seattle fans made their presence known. I give them credit. Because they really played a part in that safety. Because when Peyton Manning wanted to do all his Omahas and pointing and doing all of this, no one could hear him. Which, thank God, because I don't want to be sitting here hearing a whole lot of Omahas. Snap the darn ball. To me, he does all that just to make himself look good and for show. That's the one thing I can't stand about Peyton Manning. You're doing all of that for no reason. Just snap the darn ball. You got enough time to go up into the stands, go to the vendor, get yourself a hot dog and a soda, sit there, eat it, slurp down the soda, and then get back to the line of scrimmage. You're like, okay, whenever you're ready to snap the ball. You got enough time to do all of that. Snap the ball. Nobody wants to hear all that Omaha stuff. So the fans took that out the gate from the beginning. And Peyton Manning wanted no part of what Seattle was bringing. You can tell that. Oh, my God. He wanted no part of what Seattle was bringing. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Go 49ers. Hopefully next year you guys can get it done. But we'll see. Take care. Bye-bye.